And now the director of Sunseed the Journey and today's host, Amartat Kohn. Sunseed the Journey and today's host, Amartat Kohn.
Well, hello everyone. Sorry for that little technical glitch there, but I'm really excited to have you all with us for this Wisdom Talk number 16 in our series of enlightening discussions with some of our eye-opening contemporary spiritual thought leaders. Today is going to be a little bit different because we are going to take actually a video that we shot on May 21st, 2022 in Chicago. And then after we see the video, we're going to have a chance to meet live Swami Sarvapriyananda, take some of your questions, and then have a meditation led by him. For those of you who don't know or have never seen Swami Sarvapriyananda, he's a Vivekananda Vedanta monk. He was actually born in Eastern India, and as a young man, always had a hunger for how to realize the purpose of his life. He studied business management, and afterwards decided he wanted to become a monk, went into the monastery. Today, he's head of the Vedanta Society in New York City, the oldest Vivekananda Vedanta Center in the United States. He has this way of taking the ancient teachings and bringing them into the modern life. You'll be totally amazed at his presence, his answers. He's been credited as being one of the top speakers in the world today on Vedanta and on the inner life. Before we start, I just want to remind you that you'll have a chance to see all of our Wisdom Talk programs. And after this is over, you may want to go back and listen to some parts of it again. I know I've listened to it several times by going to our website at sunseed.org and or sunseed.org/wisdom talks if you actually want to get into all the past wisdom talks. And while you're there, please do subscribe because you'll want to be on our mailing list. You don't want to miss any of the programs we have planned the rest of this year. We have live events coming on and movies and all sorts of things. And speaking of movies, you might as well, if you haven't seen it yet, take a look at the groundbreaking movie, the classic Sunseed the Journey, which you can also see on our website. Well, without any further ado, let me introduce the video that we shot in Chicago, and you'll have a chance to listen to Swamiji speak. And please, if you've got any questions, I forgot to say, put them in the chat. We'll try to get to all the questions. Well, we can't get to all of them. We'll try to get to your questions, especially if you put them in the chat now. We have some people that send in questions from before. So please, let's roll the video and listen to Swamiji. Say your name, what center you're with, and then tell us how you got inspired or with an individual or an event in your life to become a monk.
Well, I guess I'd start with the fact that I'm a monk of the Ramakrishna order, and my name is Swami Sarvapriyananda. And how did I become a monk? That's actually not so easy to answer. I mean, all the way back, I can remember as a kid, I grew up in this house where there was books of Vivekananda, and I was a bookish kind of kid. So I read a lot. This was way before the internet and cable TV, so books were the go-to for spending time. And I read a lot, and what struck me was that, is this really true, that God really exists and God can be experienced, and that is the purpose of human life, and that I too could do it, and I not only could do it, this is actually what human life is meant for, and that rang so true for me, even as a child. So all the way back, I can remember even when in grade 8 or 9, I used to think, what will I be when I grow up? And I was fascinated, still am, by aeroplanes. So it used to be a pilot first, and then search for God. I didn't quite know what a monk was. And very soon it became, search for God became the only thing. And by the time I finished college, I had decided I'm going to be a monk. I didn't explore too far because the Ramakrishna order was very close to our family. My parents were devotees. And I found the teachings, especially of Swami Vivekananda, very congenial, something that I took to very easily. So the moment I finished my studies, I went straight to the monastery and joined, and here I am. And thank you for having me on this program.
While you were in the monastery as a monk, what would you say were some of the, or actually a very memorable experience you had as you were being going through the process of deepening?
Oh, that's a much more difficult question. When you say memorable, obviously the first few days of monastic life, when I made the transition from being a student in a business school to being a novice monk, those days are very clear in my memory. I remember, that I had some money with me when I entered the monastery, and I thought I'd better donate it, because I'm not supposed to keep money. And they were saying, no, that's all right. And then I said, this is the last donation I'm making, so don't make a big deal out of it, because I won't have any money to donate after this. I still remember one of the elderly monks saying, we have got a funny one. So, and something came up about vacations. I said, all right, I'm going to go into a permanent vacation. Being a monk I'm retiring early, So, yes, the initial days, we were very fortunate to be under a master, the head monk of the ashram where I joined, wonderful Swami. And over the years, I realized how important that was, the formative influence. When you come new into a monastery, you are fresh, and you're very idealistic, and you're very eager to learn, and you take impressions very fast. So all the good, noble, spiritually powerful impressions are absorbed in immediately, and they last you a lifetime. So yeah.
By the way, where were you a monk at?
The ashram where I joined the order is called Ramakrishna Mission Vidyapit Deoghar. That's in the eastern part of India. It's an ancient Shiva temple there. It's called Baidyanath Dham. Goes back thousands of years. There's an ashram nearby. It's a school for kids and also an ashram with monks there. So I joined there. It's a beautiful place. It's one of the first schools established by our order in 1922. So my initial years there, it's a wonderful atmosphere for a young monk to grow up there, especially the training given by our senior monk, Swami Suhitanandaji, who is now a vice president of our order. Very revered. And he's especially good with training younger monks. I still treasure, for example, the night walks. The group of novices, after the day's work, we would go for half an hour walk with the senior Swami, and we were supposed to recite, we were supposed to memorize a shloka of the Gita, verse of the Gita every day. And we were supposed to recite that and give a translation as best as we could. And then there would be wonderful discussion, about spiritual life, any questions we had, and he would tell us inspiring stories of other monks he had seen. And those I have retained over the last more than 20 years I've been a monk, and I see myself sharing many of those things in my talks. That was one part of my monastic life which was very important, very significant, I think. The next was when I went to, a very important part was meeting senior monks, Somebody told me the beauty of an ashram is the senior monks, advanced elderly monks, and the newcomers. That shows an ashram is vibrant. You have these people who have spent a lifetime in spiritual practice, and you have a flow of fresh blood coming in, and newcomers seeking. And that's really the beauty of an ashram. So there were a number of wonderful swamis I met over the last 20 years whose, they provide inspiration, and they provide a spiritual stimulus and spiritual insights too. One of the first I met there was in that ashram where I joined, apart from the senior monk who was the head of the ashram, was this Swami called Swami Pavanananda. He was an Irishman, and he had come to India in the interwar years between the First World War and the Second World War. He had heard about Swami Vivekananda, and he wanted to be a disciple of Swami Vivekananda. When he came, he heard that Swami Vivekananda had passed long ago. But he went and joined the order, became a monk eventually. A wonderful Swami, a deeply spiritual man, a deeply happy man. I mean, just to share, I have so many stories about him, but just to share one. In the last years of his life, he's losing his memory a little bit. I would walk with him down to his room after the evening prayers. And I remember when we were entering his room, I would help him to take off his shoes. I remember him looking down at me and saying, I don't know where this place is. He doesn't even recognize his own room. He's forgotten. I don't even know where this place is. But I do know one thing, that I am in great joy. I am in bliss. Now, that's amazing. Loss of memory. I've seen old people, loss of memory, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, these things destroy a person. This person's joy was something that was untouched. As the other other parts of his being fell away, that thing shone forth even more brightly.
Can I ask what is the objective of Vedanta or the Ramakrishna order?
Yes, Vedanta is a spiritual philosophy of Hinduism. Literally, it's the teachings of the Upanishads. Upanishads are texts found in the Vedas, and they contain the final teachings, the highest spiritual philosophical teachings of the Vedas. And so that's called Vedanta. Anta means end or final. So the end of the Vedas in the sense of the final teachings. And behind any form of Hinduism, you would find some flavor of Vedanta. So, for example, the Vedanta that we follow is called Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta. Of course, interpreted and taught afresh in the 19th century by Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. What's the goal? The goal is nothing short of enlightenment, a realization of who we are, and who we are, they are quite straightforward about this. You are none other than God. You are one with God. Not in the sense of a person. The moment I say this, especially in the Western world, the first reaction is from, I've heard at least 2 professors saying to me, and doesn't that make you narcissistic? But it's not about the limited self. When I say you are God, it means everybody is God. And it's not that the limited self, this little fellow Sarvapriyananda is God. No more than a wave in the ocean would be the entire ocean. It isn't. But you are one with God. There is, at the core of your being, there is God. In Vedanta, it's called Brahman, existence, consciousness, bliss. And to realize that, to realize our true nature, that is the purpose of life. One might say that isn't the purpose of my life, whatever you might say or whatever Vedanta might say. But actually, it dovetails quite well with what we want in life. We want fulfillment in life. We want to overcome suffering in some deep existential way. We want a solution to suffering. And that's what Vedanta promises. And in fact, not just Vedanta. If you take a big picture view of the whole thing, then every religion promises that in different language. The core idea in every religion is that there is a transcendence of our human condition. It's possible. Not only is it possible, it must be done. That's what we are here for. And so that's what Vedanta promises. You do these spiritual practices and you realize who you truly are. Yes.
So when I'm reading about Ramakrishna and Yogananda, there are many stories of them going into the highest stage of samadhi or materializing in different places, all sorts of things that we would call paranormal. Is that something that's just in literature, or have you actually experienced people in today's world who have these type of experiences?
Before I answer that, let me say that is absolutely unimportant. And also, it's actually against true spirituality. That's what spiritual masters, teachers in different religions throughout the world have always emphasized. This attraction for the occult, for the mysterious, for the paranormal. This is a huge diversion away from true spirituality. So, caution aside, buyer beware aside, is this true? Are those things true? I would believe so. I would believe, and I don't think there is anything supernatural about them. I firmly believe there are capacities of the human mind which we have not plumbed yet. And these things are interesting as far as, say, psychology is concerned, or even neuroscience is concerned. So scientists should take an interest in these things and find out more about it. But if you are a spiritual seeker, if you are seeking enlightenment and freedom from suffering, in that case, one would do well to steer firmly clear of such things. Have I seen such things? To some extent, not too many, but a few things which can't be explained otherwise. The Swami whom I mentioned, Swami Pavanananda, the 90-year-old Irish Swami, towards the end of his life, I saw a few cases of what could only be telepathy, like literally seeing what's in my mind. You can explain it away as coincidence, but I chose not to. But it's not important. It's just not important. And one should be very careful about not getting diverted to that kind of thing. It can be very attractive to dabble in those things.
So how would a person know if they are enlightened? Or how can you judge if someone else who seems to be a great being and conveys a lot of wisdom, if that is the goal, then is there a way to evaluate yourself or others?
Right. First of all, can you evaluate others? The answer would have to be a qualified no. There are descriptions of enlightened people, and when you would look at the descriptions, for example, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks the same question to Krishna. How would you describe an enlightened person? Yes. When you talk about enlightenment and freedom, one would like to know what's it like to be enlightened. Absolutely. Right. So, and Krishna gives a detailed description, not once, I think at least thrice in the Bhagavad Gita. But if you notice those descriptions, they're all internal. That means internal to the enlightened person. So when all desires which infest our heart, the human heart, when they drop away, and you are centered in the radiance of the self. Now, how do you know the desires have dropped away and the person is centered in the radiance of the self? Only that person knows. So in that sense, one cannot directly judge whether another person is enlightened or not. But as I said, it's a qualified no. There are ways. One way would be you would feel very uplifted, very purified. It's only word I can use is holy. That's a good word. That you sense the holiness of the person, and that person would communicate some of that to people around. It's an unfailing thing. I've noticed with some of the very senior monks of the order, when you go near them or in their company, the whole atmosphere is surcharged with God and spirituality and nobility and a kind of, for example, the 13th president of our order, Swami Ranganathanandaji, who was very well known, like an international ambassador of Vedanta. In his company, you would know that this is truly what is meant to be a noble person, a really high-minded person, quite apart from being enlightened and spiritual. I suppose he was enlightened. If you ask me, have you met any enlightened person, I would count him as one of the few I would think as being truly enlightened. But noble, high. I met this young monk. He told me that he became a monk because this Swami Ranganathanji, used to go to their city to teach, and his mother used to visit and join the classes. And he was a little kid who would accompany his mother to the classes of Swami Ranganathananda. And he doesn't remember anything of the classes. He just remembers, this is a man. I would like to be like him. So when he grew up, he said, I wanted... Now, a kid admiring a monk. It's not a football player or a movie star or an action figure or somebody. But he says, this is a man. I would like to be a man like this person. And he's not alone. Swami Ranganathanji is not alone. There are others, some known, some not so known. But even there, one could be mistaken, One could be a great enthusiast and could be easily carried away. So there is no cut and dried way of seeing that person. Would you know yourself you're enlightened? I think a very good caution would be, I always say, it's a very good idea, even if you're enlightened, to consider yourself to be on the path. It's much more dangerous to be not enlightened and then think that you're enlightened. One can do enormous spiritual damage to oneself and to others also. So there are cases of people who are fairly well along in the path, and then they consider themselves enlightened, and then they start teaching, and then it leads to all sorts of trouble for them and for many others also.
In the spiritual community, we have many stories, unfortunately, of people who have been, very inspiring leaders to others, and yet their human failings have pulled them in a different direction.
And they can recover and go on in the spiritual journey, but the problem is it creates harm to others. I have met people who've been shocked by the behavior of their, very beloved spiritual master. Now, I wouldn't be as upset as those people because I know human beings are human beings, and we are all on a spiritual journey. But it's just that at a certain stage early stage in our journey, I would want my ideal to be perfect. So I consider this person to be spiritual, so he or she must be perfect. That doesn't work. As I go along in my spiritual journey, we become much more balanced. All right, nobody is all that great, nobody is all that bad either. And the point is, we must all become spiritual. We can and we must. That's more important. That's a more mature approach to take in spiritual life.
Do you think enlightenment is something that it's like a threshold that you pass and then everything is changed? Or is it something you think that comes in different waves?
That's a good question to ask, and I'm afraid my answer must be again yes and no. In Advaita Vedanta, definitely there is a threshold to be passed. It's clearly, there is a point, you can call it a breakthrough. There are technical names for it, that the moment of enlightenment. There's a word in Sanskrit, Brahmakara Vritti, that translates into a mental modification of the form of Brahman, whatever that might mean. But it just is a breakthrough. There's a clear before and after. Afterwards, nothing is the same anymore. You know that is real, and you are that reality, not as you as a person. It's not that you as a person become God. It's not even that you as a person become free. You are free of the person. I like that phrase. I don't know where I read it, but that's so true. The person still continues, but you are not that anymore. The person is still you, but you are not that person anymore. That person doesn't exist without you. So, yes, there is a before and an after. However, that may be instantaneous, clearly a sharp division, but there is a lot that leads up to that. In most cases, a person has been seeking and trying for years and decades at that moment when that breakthrough comes. It does come for a very few people spontaneously, I gather, reading the lives of Ramana Maharshi, or, for example, Eckhart Tolle, the Power of Now, and a few others who seem to have spontaneously awakened. So that's the breakthrough, yes. It can be instantaneous, and there's a clear before and after. And after that, there is no question of any more confusion. There's no question of that you are that Atman or consciousness, whatever you call it, that reality. It's effortless, just as being Amartat or Sarvapriyananda is effortless. I don't have to practice being Sarvapriyananda morning and evening, even though it's a given name. Just 20 years before I didn't have this, before becoming a monk, I didn't have this name. Only after my initiation into the vows of monasticism, we are given this name. And yet that's become so natural to me. How much more natural is our real natural, the reality which we are, Atman. So it becomes effortless. You realize you always wear that, and you wonder how I never saw that. All right, the other side of the picture, it is progressive. Now, knowledge can come instantaneously. when it does come. You may be seeking for a long time, but the breakthrough comes instantaneously. However, the mind is a machine. It's a creature of habit. So, and all this has been studied so deeply in ancient India. There are whole texts about it. There's one called Jivan Mukti Viveka, written about 700 years ago by an Advaita master, a study of the free while living. You're enlightened and still in this body. And there they say that true enlightenment has three components. One is this breakthrough. They call it Tattva Jnana, the realization of reality. The other one is a control of the mind. It's not helpfully called Manonasha. Literally, it means annihilation of the mind. It's not literal annihilation of the mind. It's the ability to have total control of the mind, of merging in samadhi, for example. And then the third one would be purification of the mind. It's called Vasanakshaya, the eradication of conditioning, past conditioning. Now, if all three are well developed, you have the breakthrough, you have the ability to plunge your mind into deep meditation at will, and your mind is scrubbed clean. You are truly, fully enlightened. However, those texts say that it is possible that sometimes people do make the breakthrough. And this was a phenomenon well known in ancient India. And their recommendation is something exactly the opposite of what happens today. Their recommendation was such a person should dive into spiritual practice deeply again. Because for the first time, you're no longer seeking, you have found it. So the recommendation is stay there and purify the mind.
And keep seeking.
Keep seeking or stay with it. You are very well placed now. Don't go out and start giving talks, or go on a lecture tour or write a book or something. Until the mind becomes steady in that realization and the mind is purified. And they say that those who have been on a progressive path for many years have an advantage there, because they've struggled to keep to a moral life, build character. They've struggled with meditation morning and evening for years maybe. And when the breakthrough does come, it's manifested that much more easily. It's much more easier to live the life, to manifest your knowledge, your enlightenment in day-to-day life. Otherwise, what happens is a person with a very good grasp of Vedanta, maybe even the breakthrough, would still struggle to, manifest it in life when faced with nasty behavior or physical illness, or maybe failure in some external endeavor, might again just be overwhelmed by negativity in the mind. At the same time, knowing that I am not the mind. It's a peculiar situation, but it could happen.
So how do you see your work today? You've been part of this New York Center, you've gone through these experiences in life, you're out in the world more with like this, having talks with people. How do you see what you feel like your work is and what you can bring right now?
Right now, I am at the Vedanta Society of New York. And that's a small place, but it's pretty historical because it's the first Vedanta Society established by Swami Vivekananda, who was the first teacher of Vedanta to come out of India to the West. And in 1894 in New York, he started the Vedanta Society of New York with the objective of spreading the ideas of Vedanta. His interest was not so much to get converts into Vedanta, rather he, like his teacher Sri Ramakrishna, firmly believed that all the religions embody this highest truth in different language, philosophy, rituals, but they have this core, all of them. And if one could spread these ideas, people without converting to Vedanta or Hinduism or anything, remaining Christians, remaining Unitarians, Catholics, whatever, Muslims, Jews, but they would have this, the idea that spirituality is firmly the center of not only religion but also life. That's one. It is possible to become deeply spiritual, enlightened in this very life itself, and we must actually. And third, there's absolutely no need to be narrow or fanatical about religion. I mean, every religion is a treasure house. It's like a common heritage of humanity. If these ideas were to percolate throughout American society, and he saw that this country had probably a greater chance of manifesting Vedanta in society than maybe even India, which is hierarchical. At that time it was colonized, and there are so many huge problems to overcome, whereas this country was founded on the ideals of liberty and freedom, and there was a freshness about this country. And he liked the American pioneer spirit, the can-do attitude. So he loved this country. And so I see myself as taking that work forward in the 21st century, conveying this idea that our real nature is divine. Divine means in this sense that we are beings of awareness, we are beings of consciousness. And in a deep sense, it is all right, and we can realize this in this very life, and we should make an attempt to realize it. One of the most powerful ways, the most powerful way I know, is Advaita Vedanta. So yes, in general spirituality, but in particular Advaita Vedanta, which I find is very direct, it's very rational, highly compatible with our modern scientific mindset. If I were to take out to meet a group of skeptics and atheists and scientists, which I have done again and again, more so after coming to the United States.
Especially with the youth today, they're more into rejection of God than they are acceptance.
Right. The one thing that I would always roll out in front of such an audience is Advaita Vedanta. I mean, there is enough of faith-based religion. The problem is faith-based religion requires faith. Even to get underway, you require faith. And it works. But it works only if you have faith. If you start with questioning, if you start with skepticism, it won't work. You can't be a very good Christian and be Christopher Hitchens at the same time, or Richard Dawkins at the same time. However, the path of yoga, which is the path of mystical experience, the samadhi you talked about, that has a unique appeal in this day and age, not just in the United States, all over the world now, which is more or less the same mentality you see all over the world, among the young people especially, that you can actually experience God. How did the young Narendranath Datta become Vivekananda? He went and asked his master, have you seen God? And Sri Ramakrishna says, yes, straightforward. So that is a tremendous appeal in this empirical age we live in. Even more than that, and there also one can question that you think you've seen something. I'm sure you feel that you've seen God, but I'm here to tell you you had a stroke in some part of your brain, and that's what makes you feel that way. The reason there can be skepticism about these claims is they are not shared experiences. The experiences of mystics, however fascinating, are very private, very unique, very exclusive, very limited. In India, it was well known that you could have these experiences. It was open to everybody. Everybody could, and one would try to have these experiences. They would prove to you the claims of religion. Not so much in the West, because of the influence of, I think, the Catholic Church especially, which had a whole range of mystics, but the idea was these are something like Olympic athletes of religion, it's meant for them, but it's not for everybody. We are here to say it's for everybody, you can. But the danger with that is, it can, you can dismiss it as, some kind of pathology, psychopathology. Always mystics have been, throughout the ages, have been dismissed as being crazy people.
If you read the Ramakrishna book, even his own contemporaries considered at some point he was out of his mind.
We worship him and we consider him the super mystic and avatar. All that's today. There were a solid number of people who actually saw him and day in and day out, and they thought he was crazy. So that's one problem with the path of mysticism. That problem is not there with Advaita Vedanta, because Advaita Vedanta only takes that much of our experience which is shared and common. We are awake, and we dream and we sleep. That's enough. Advaita takes that, and from there it moves in clear logical steps to demonstrate to you that you are this witness consciousness. Now, demonstrating that does not mean enlightenment. You can't argue your way to God, but it can take you very close.
Can you plead?
Pleading, yes, of course, if there is a God. It's like the Tibetans have a very good example to show that. There's a needle on a mountain side, and then there are instructions. The first instructions would be very general. Go up the mountainside. The next instruction would be more particular. Go near that huge rock there. And behind the rock, you find this tree. And near the tree, on the left side, you find this big root. Near the root, at the tip of the root, look closely, and you would find the needle. But even the last instruction would still leave you hanging there until you see it with your own eyes. So Advaita Vedanta is that last final instruction, which brings you really, really close. And then you're supposed to grasp it. There it is intuitive. You're supposed to get it. That really appeals to a lot of people, especially young people today.
Can we talk about East and West? Because there, this thousands of years of working with the mind and dealing with the real purpose of life is obviously not the mind, right? So we have this in India especially, and you have the Western material world. It seems like there's a shifting that's happening. Is this, some people have even said that East will become West and West will become East. Where are we in that?
You see a lot of that happening today. You're right. In my back of my mind, I'm hearing, professors, ranting against this essentializing approach of this modern academic approach would say that no, there's no such thing as the East or as a West, but there's certain truth to talking about the East and the West. In fact, one beautiful description of Vivekananda when he came here and spoke here in Chicago, at the World Parliament of Religions in 1893, when he stood up to speak, he was speaking to the West. The energies and the greatest achievements of the Western mind were before him. It was the universal exposition, the science and technology. Electricity was the cool thing at that time. It was on display. Edison was there. Tesla was there. I don't know if Edison ever came to Vivekananda's talks. There's no record of that. But Tesla did, which also counts for a little bit of a difference between their mindsets. But one of our Swamis later on, Abhedanandaji, actually met Edison, and Edison gave him a tour of his laboratory. So this was the Western world. And behind Vivekananda lay 5,000 years of patient development, inquiry and development of spirituality. Vast range of approaches, yogic, devotional, philosophical, ritualistic, so many things, Hindu and Jain and Buddhistic. So all of that sort of met at the moment when Vivekananda stood up to speak there in the World Parliament of Religions. And what we have been seeing in the last 100 years or so is actually the outcome of that, the flower blooming, as it were. After Vivekananda, all these other Vedanta societies, other monks came. Then you had other teachers, a whole range of yogis and swamis and lamas, all coming from India, from the East to America and other parts of the West.
Like in Sunseed, where we had the beginnings, well, not the beginnings, but another beginning in 1970. Yes.
One of the explosions, a point of inflection, if you will, at that time. So this happened, and this is an ongoing process, and you will begin. What Vivekananda wanted has actually happened to a great extent. For example, it's no longer politically correct, polite, or even in good taste to claim my religion alone is true and everybody else is a heathen and a devil worshipper, and they all go to hell. There are some people who would still say such things and believe such things, but only in private, in their own gathering. They would be laughed off stage if they did that in a public gathering today. That was not so 100 years ago. So that has changed. Then this idea of the inherent equality, which is being worked out in the West and in the East now. In India, we have this tremendously hierarchical society. There's this wonderful teaching of the oneness of all existence, and in practice, a tremendously divided and hierarchical society. But all that's fast disappearing now. The equality in terms of race, castes in India, and gender. And all of this, you might say this doesn't have much to do with Vivekananda. I think it does. These were the ideas that were implanted then. I met this brilliant young Vietnamese researcher at Harvard. He was working in Boston College. He was working in the philosophy of work, and his general area was management. And he said, the more I researched it, I saw some of the greatest ideas in work as spirituality have come from one person in America, an Indian visitor in the late 19th century called Vivekananda. He didn't know anything about Vivekananda. He traced back many of the ideas in the New Age, the New Thought movement, back to Vivekananda. So now he is doing research on Vivekananda now. So yes, they are coming together. Here, primarily in the United States, but what happens here is very quickly echoed back in India and across the world.
So this, what I've seen, at least, is that the Vivekananda society, as I've seen it, tends to be still very relying upon the monks that come from India. Do you see also within Vedanta or the society structure a movement also to the West? So there'll be more Western swamis who will be leaders, and women especially. I know you have monasteries for women, but are they out front as leaders?
I certainly hope more of that will be happening. It is already happening. There are some of the nuns, the sannyasinis, who are there, are already well-known speakers and writers in their in their own standing. And I'm sure, and I hope more of that. We'll see more of that.
The new world demands it.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not just the Vedanta Society. We are like the seed of this whole thing which has happened here.
It's in all the organized religions, pretty much.
Right. Even something as popular and widespread as Hatha Yoga, the physical aspect of yoga. In New York, every other block you would see a yoga studio. I remember a teacher of yoga from India in exasperation coming up to me and saying, "What is this the Westerners are doing with yoga? You have beer yoga and goat yoga. This is a blasphemy. This is horrible." And I said, look, two things. One, it was in our hands for centuries. And what did we do with it? Nothing. It was dwindling and dying out, and it wasn't developing at all. It wasn't popular. Even in India, it wasn't popular. Now the Westerners got hold of it. It's a worldwide phenomenon now. And it's out of your hands, out of my hands, and good. It's no matter how we react or what we say, it's not going to make much of a difference. On the other hand, this pushback for authenticity, for being rooted in tradition, that's also good. So that keeps a kind of a corrective to this whole movement. It's not just yoga, it's all the others. It's Vedanta, it's Buddhism. So there are two books on Buddhism recently. Robert Wright, Why Buddhism is True. And I think Evan Thompson, Why I'm Not a Buddhist. I think he is a Buddhist, or at least he's a well-known Buddhist scholar. And his reaction, why I'm not a Buddhist, was that what's being taught to me here is a kind of mech Buddhism, an Americanized version of Buddhism, which is not authentic to any tradition. So this push for authenticity and tradition is also good. I don't know if that was your question.
Well, we're almost out of time. So what I'm hoping is, usually we end our wisdom talks with a meditation or a practice, and I'm going to ask you if you could record something that we can use later rather than record it right now, because I want to use these last couple of minutes with you to have you give a message direct to our viewers. If you would, I think you can look directly into the camera for this, and anything that's in your heart to share with the hearts of our viewers.
Well, the thing closest to my heart is Advaita Vedanta. We attend to so...
Hold on one second.
Yes.
Which place should he be looking? I did it correctly. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to be sure. Yeah.
We attend to so many things in our lives, except ourselves. One might say, that's not true, Swami. I look after myself very well. But yes, we look after the body. Maybe even we take therapy and look after the mind. But we're not the body. We are not even the mind. We haven't even begun to look at what we truly are. Vedanta is about who or what we truly are. And it's actually much easier than many of the things that we do in life. One of our senior Swamis used to say, the kind of work that you put in getting through examinations in university, with less effort than that, one can realize God. So I don't know if that is true, but yes, it's not all that difficult. and it's enormously rewarding. Even before the breakthrough or the highest enlightenment, it's rewarding at every step of the way. As you walk down this path of self-inquiry and discovering what I am, um, every day of our lives, we feel that its deepest meaning is there. It's really worthwhile that this path is true. I'll end with something that a kid asked me when I was a novice, more than 20 years ago. The little boy asked me, are you happy being a monk? And I was a newly minted monk. And what I said to him holds true even today. I said yes and no. Why yes? Because every day that passes, I feel this path is true, that there is something that's enormously valuable, nourishing, worthwhile here. There's nothing that compares with it, with seeking enlightenment. I'm not saying just being a monk, just seeking enlightenment for everybody. And of course, I said no because I think I could do a better job of it. I could meditate more and better. I could behave better with people, and so on. So yes and no. Spirituality is for everybody. Everybody can and should be spiritual. Thank you so much, Amitat.
You're muted.
Well, technically, I was just muted, so excuse me for that. But I just want to say, don't go away, because we have Swamiji here in the studio to answer some of your questions live. Of course, you gave us many more questions than we have a chance to answer directly with you. But I hope you had as much, I say fun, but enjoyed the depth of what was given to us in the last 40 minutes by Swamiji. And you're hungry like I am to hear what he's going to say in a couple of minutes. Just to remind you, you can all go back and listen to the talk we just gave and the questions and answers that are going to come up by going to our website at sunseed.org/wisdom talks. We'll also be on our Sun Seed YouTube channel and our Facebook page, so you'll have lots of opportunities to review this in the future and look at all of our other previous wisdom talks. And why not take a look at the movie Sun Seed, The Journey, where we captured some of the great teachers that came in 1970 into the West to really bring another wave of bringing meditation and yoga into the West. And finally, we support these free broadcasts by your help and your donations and your purchases from our Guru Shop. So please go there and take a look. There's some great things there for you. Okay, so if any of you missed the introduction to Swami Sarvapriyananda, he's the head of the Vedanta Center in New York City, and he's a fascinating human being. So let's bring you in now, Swamiji. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Amitat. Namaste to you. Namaste
you.
to everybody who's watching. And thank you for having me on Sun Seeds once again.
Well, it's our great pleasure, and I'm not going to really say any more. I think you've gotten more questions than you can handle, but please pick out a few, and I can't wait to hear your answers.
Thank you, Amitat. We'll dive right in. What I'll do is, there's some questions coming in live right now. I'll take up some of those, and a lot of good questions, which Amitat has put in a lot of hard work in arranging and organizing them. So he's shared some of them with me, and I'll try to answer some of those as well.
Great.
All right, here goes. On the live chat, there is Shalini who asks, Swamiji, once we understand what Tattvam Asi, what is Tattvam Asi by learning Vedanta,
Can we just do upasana to abide in it, or do we have to read and listen to Vedanta on and on? Okay. What she is asking is that thou art, the central teaching of Advaita Vedanta, is that there is one ultimate reality, existence, consciousness, bliss, and you are that. Our essential self is that. We have to realize that we are not this body, not this mind, not this limited being. We are this unlimited existence, consciousness, bliss. Now, what she's asking is, once I understand what is being said, do I have to meditate to abide in it, or do I have to read or listen to Vedanta on and on? I'll address that on and on part of it. That's funny at the end. If you meditate, you'll still have to meditate on and on, by the way. And so if you're studying Vedanta, it's not like a tedious process of keeping on reading and listening to teachings and thinking about it. If you meditate, you have to keep on doing that also. Now, when I realize, when I get a clear grasp that I am awareness, unlimited aware. Unlimited means I'm not born, nor do I die, immortal. I'm not limited in space or time. The entire universe is one with me. It is an appearance in my real nature as consciousness, and so on. This is what is meant by unlimited awareness. And it's a fact right now. We don't see it. But once we come to see it, now, can we just do meditation to abide in it? Look at the question. Am I going to abide in it with the help of meditation? It's like saying that once the wave realizes it is water, does it have to do a lot of meditation? That water meditation, I am water, I am water, I am water, to remain as water? You'll say, no, it was water even when it didn't, suppose it didn't realize it's water. It was water all the time. If the clay pot were to realize that it's clay, then what further practices does the clay pot have to do to remain, abide as clay? So you understand the drift of it. If we truly realize I am existence, consciousness, bliss, you don't have to, you're not supposed to do some more other things to become existence, consciousness, bliss, or to stay as existence, consciousness, bliss. If I am Sarvapriyananda, take another example, the water and wave example, the clay and pot example, but let's take our own example as this person. Even this personhood, I don't have to practice to know that I'm Sarvapriyananda. Once the name, monastic name Sarvapriyananda was given to me, initially it took some time to get used to it. But now, even this name which has just been applied to me as a name, monastic name given to me about 20 years ago, that has become so natural. I don't have to do any kind of practice that I am Sarvapriyananda. I have to meditate on the fact. No, it's effortless. So I am existence, consciousness, bliss, unlimited awareness. This does not take any effort to become that, to stay as that, or to abide in that. I distinctly have the feeling, the question might be, Swami, I understand all that. But I still feel that somehow I have slipped away from that understanding. And how can I return to that understanding? Or I might say that in the midst of a lot of activities and a lot of challenges in day-to-day life, I don't seem to remain in my identity, real identity, as this witness consciousness, as unlimited awareness. I still start reacting as this individual being with all its quirks and defects. So how do I remedy that? That is a valid question. What is happening there is, if I am pure awareness, now as pure awareness, I'm at no point slipping away from my identity as pure awareness. Even my knowledge that I'm pure awareness does not go away. What is happening there is the mind. The mind is not mindful of its own nature. Because of its flickering nature, maybe it's untrained, unsubjugated, impure nature, it gets swept away in day-to-day activities. Now, there are two things to do there. One is meditation. There is a whole set of Vedantic meditations which corrects this tendency in the mind. Remember, even when the mind is swept away, even when in the midst of activities I am swept away into my identification as this person, Sarvapriyananda, even then I am Brahman. But to to remain centered in the midst of activities, in the midst of the ups and downs of life, meditation is very useful. And there is a whole set of Vedantic meditations called Nididhyasana. They are special meditations which enable us to, as you said, abide in it. All right. The second thing, more important thing, that read, listen to Vedanta, do it systematically, take up texts and follow it with the purpose. Now that you have understood it, with the purpose of deepening that understanding, so that this question goes away, that how can I abide in my real nature as Brahman? The question may be a more valid question, maybe I would like my mind to reflect and manifest the truth that I have realized. I have realized I am the Atman, but my mind and in my thought, in my speech, in my behavior, I should be able to manifest that divinity within me. That's a good question, and that requires practice. That requires immersion, staying with what you have now newly realized. All right, enough said. Let me go to one of the questions which Amartya had shared with me. This is from Marie Claire. My question is, what is the wise and gentle sentience that gives me sensible and kindly advice? It comes unbidden and just gently advises. Why do we pray for guidance, and from whom is it given? As I understand from Advaita Vedanta, Brahman is not involved in our mundane lives, merely oversees and is joy unlimited. So whom do we pray to? How come there are avatars if there is nothing but Brahman? All right. Here is, I want to introduce the concept of two truths. Relative truth, which is in Sanskrit called Vyavaharika, transactional, empirical, relative truth, which we are abiding in now, what we see around ourselves. Here we are individual beings learning Vedanta, sitting online in an online community. This is called the transactional truth, relative truth. And the absolute truth, in Sanskrit called Paramarthika, which is Brahman, which is that there's one existence, consciousness. This is a bit like a movie on a screen. There is the screen and on which a movie is playing. Sometimes it's a comedy, sometimes it's a tragedy, but the movie is a movie. The screen remaining the same, a lot of things appear in the movie. They are not actually there. The characters are not there. The places are not there. The events did not happen. They are appearances. At the level of the movie, there is a plot. Clearly, a comedy is different from a tragedy. A horror film is different from a drama. So there are differences at the level of the movie. All of it is true. But a deeper truth would be, it's a movie. It actually is not happening. What's happening, what's there is the screen and the pictures on the screen and so on. Similarly, Brahman is the only reality, and it appears as this world of multiplicity and duality. Now, in this world, there is this world of diversity, and we find ourselves as individual beings. And Brahman is also here in this world as the God of religion. In theistic religions, you talk about God. So the concept of Brahman in Advaita Vedanta, there is this twofold. One is the absolute reality, Brahman, existence, consciousness, bliss, which you are, which we all are actually. And there's this relative conception of Brahman as the God of religion. In Sanskrit, Saguna Brahman. The ultimate reality is called Nirguna Brahman, Brahman beyond all characteristics, beyond all attributes. But Saguna Brahman is Brahman with characteristics, omnipotence, omniscience, all powerful, all loving, benevolent, all knowing. And that is the God of religion. Why am I saying all this? Now we are better placed to understand what Marie is asking. Whom do we pray to? The moment you say we are praying, so I am an individual being, I am Marie, and I'm praying, I'm doing some kind of activity, and there is something or someone I'm praying to. This is all within the relative level. If, from my perspective as the absolute truth as Brahman, there's no point who will pray to whom. There is no second reality. There is no, from that perspective, the world is an appearance. You are one with the absolute reality. But that does not mean it is invalid to pray. That does not mean that God, religion, our day-to-day lives become invalid. This is something to be understood. Just because it is a screen does not mean that the movie is not there. The movie has to be realized as a movie. In the movie, all the roles played by the actors are valid. In the theatrical performance right there in Broadway, the actors are playing different roles. Some are heroes, some are miserable, some are villains. They're not actually heroes, villains, or miserable people, but they are actors. Being actors, they can fully play those roles. So in my role as Mari, I can always pray to God. The same Brahman who is Mari is also the God of this universe, is also the universe. And so all activities here are valid. After all, why should it not be valid? If, even as a Vedantin, if I am eating and drinking and talking and giving interviews and teaching Vedanta, what prevents me from just one thing, which is praying to God? All of this is within relative reality, all of which what we are doing, even all this Advaita Vedanta, non-dualism, spirituality is all within relative reality, and so is God within relative reality. This is from classical Advaita perspective. So it's perfectly valid to pray. Whom are you praying to? You, Brahman, in your role, in your limited appearance as Mari, are praying to that all-powerful, all-knowing, loving reality called God, which is also Brahman. Yeah. Let me follow up with another question which is similar. There seems to be a paradox about getting enlightened during this lifetime and reincarnation. But the Swami says if one is unable to know Brahman, he or she can endeavor in their future births. But this statement contradicts Swami's statement again that there is no birth or death, but Brahman alone is. Would be helpful if this paradox could be explained. Yes. Now I think you know what I'm going to say. Two truths. Absolute truth, Brahman. Relative truth, there is God, world, individual beings going through lifetime after lifetime. Absolute truth, movie, screen. Relative truth, there are so many kinds of events which are happening within the movie. The paradox is when you say that there is one absolute reality, which is neither born, nor does it die, nor is it ever in suffering, nor does it need any liberation from suffering, and it does not even need any kind of spirituality. It is one perfect existence, and you are that. At the same time, we say, look, you are in suffering. You have gone through these cycles of births and deaths, and this process will continue until you attain liberation. And for attaining liberation, you better do spiritual practices like meditation and study Vedanta, do good deeds, and so on, until you realize that you are that absolute real. Now, which is it? Which is true? Are you Brahman? In which case, there's no need of all of this. Or are we this and are we going to become Brahman? Neither. We are Brahman right now, and all of this is also valid. How? Shankara explains this in just half a sentence. Jnana ajnanayoho upapatte. It all becomes logical. The paradox is resolved when you consider in terms of enlightenment and ignorance. From an enlightened perspective, Brahman alone is real, and all of this, the enlightened person does not say none of this exists. He has not switched up the movie. All of this is an appearance of Brahman. From Brahman perspective, perfectly all right. And I am that perfectly all right Brahman. Was that, did not know it earlier. From the unenlightened perspective, even when we hear all this Vedanta, if I'm not yet enlightened, it will still feel very real. Here is this world. I don't know what Brahman you're talking about. It's some kind of theoretical idea, nice philosophy. I feel I may be Brahman. I hope I am Brahman, but I still feel that I am this body, mind. I'm this individual being. I am trying to understand Vedanta. I'm trying to meditate and trying to lead a good life and struggling in life. All of this seems to be the reality. So to make this division, enlightened perspective, unenlightened perspective. In unenlightened perspective, individual being, birth, death, rebirth, all of that has meaning. And all of that seems to be absolutely real. And we have to follow that paradigm in order and try to realize that I am Brahman, from which perspective all of this becomes an appearance. Consider the movie example. There was there's some terrible tragedy, and we ask why all this is happening. From one perspective, movie perspective, yes, you can ask why all this is happening, why such sorrow, the hero faces such sorrows and challenges. We may weep in sympathy, but it's a movie. From that perspective, it's perfectly all right. Now, from the knowledge that it is, from the knowledge of reality, it's perfectly all right. Then you can enjoy the movie also. Even the sorrowful movie, the tragedy also becomes part of art for you, aesthetic for you. You are safe from the suffering. Now let me go to the questions in the comments. There's so many good questions. Then let me see. Rick is asking, regarding the example of all desires dropping away, if someone is supposedly enlightened yet behaving hedonistically, drinking, carrying on with women, etc., can we assume that he is not enlightened? Straight answer, yes. Qualified answer is this. Why would an enlightened person look for pleasure, happiness in the usual channels in which people, the unenlightened, do? We find ourselves limited and hankering for fulfillment. Then we look at the obvious channels of fulfillment. So being identified with the body has certain needs, like hunger and maybe taste. Most of the body really itself does not have too many needs. It's mostly in the mind. Even food, body has a particular need for food, and that's healthy food and little amount. But the mind has cultivated a lot of tastes, and for happiness we need all kinds of fine food and drink and entertainment, trying to fulfill myself. The person who is enlightened is already fulfilled, has realized that I am this limitless being, the entire universe is one with me. What is there that I lack? From that perspective, there's nothing that I lack. So this eagerness to grab things, to go around with a begging bowl in the world, begging for a little bit of happiness. The entire world is my own, is within me, or is an appearance of me. There's not one thing in the world which does not belong to me. So that should be the perspective of an enlightened person. If in spite of all of this, enlightened person still reacts like an unenlightened person to the worlds, to two things: terror and temptation. I without these gadgets and these entertainment and these fine clothes and food and vacations and whatnot, I will not be happy. I need those. Or terror, that something threatens me, my body, my physical well-being, my comfort, my status in life, my reputation, I feel terrified. If either of those two are there, we are actually in our limited identification. An unlimited a person who's enlightened knows one's unlimited nature, would neither be moved by temptation nor by terror. And there are such people. We have seen enlightened beings, those you consider to be genuinely deeply spiritual, you will see all of them have this tendency. They are entirely independent of of the push and pull of worldly terror and temptation. Okay, you might be getting the feeling I'm going to qualify my statement. I will qualify it a little bit, because I would be failing in my duty if I did not point out that the enlightened person is not bound even by our standards of morality. So in every one of these mystical traditions, you'll always have this example of a crazy enlightened person who may be behaving sometimes like a mad person. We have this saying that an enlightened person may behave like a child, may behave like a ghost, a ghoul, like a completely mentally ill person, or like a person jada, which means absolutely absorbed in the transcendent reality. From outside, there's no reaction, in samadhi. Or might be living what might seem to be a hedonistic life. The thing is, in such case, those cases are very rare. If you see a person who's pretending to be that, it really doesn't make a difference to us, because A person who is claiming to be enlightened and yet leading a hedonistic life may or may not be enlightened. We do not know. It's most unlikely that such a person is enlightened. And in any case, it doesn't make a difference to us, because it is understood in the tradition, a person who is a teacher has to be not only enlightened or spiritually far along on the path of enlightenment, but has to be of impeccable conduct. Otherwise, is not useful as a teacher. So such cases would, in any case, would have no bearing on us, because they are not going to be our teachers. David is asking, Swamiji, what can you tell us about your experience of the Holocaust? I do not have a personal experience of the Holocaust, but if you mean what do I think about the Holocaust, what is my personal view? I think you are asking about the problem of evil. There was a similar question sent to me earlier, which says that, is there evil outside of us? Who decides what is evil? Or is this only referring to the inner clouding and obstacles that we need to overcome in order to see our true self? All right. I'll take David's question as a question about the nature of evil, represented most horrifyingly in our age as the Holocaust, where 6 million or more Jews, just because of, for no fault of theirs, just because they belong to a targeted minority, because of their religious identity, they're just rounded up and massacred, one and all, in the gas chambers, in the concentration camps in Germany in Second World War. Look at the nature of this evil. Enormous numbers of people, all slaughtered without any mercy, and the suffering of the others, even those who survived, how traumatized and how much suffering there was in those camps. Also happening in one of the most advanced countries in the world at that time, in Europe, in the heart of Europe, in Germany, philosophically, culturally, literature, music, culture, industry, economic power, military power, in every respect, one of the most powerful and advanced nations of the world at that time. And yet this happens there. So this is evil, the sheer embodiment of evil. Now, how do you deal with that from a Vedantic perspective, from a spiritual perspective? There are different ways of dealing with it. One, that evil is a force in itself. So the question which was that, is evil just the obstacles and ignorance in our mind? When we say ignorance and obstacles, it seems to be a very delicate thing. Ignorance, so you're ignorant about something, just pick up a book and read about it, and ignorance will be overcome by knowledge. And yet evil is not so flimsy. So there is something to the Christian doctrine of that there of a kind of force of evil. I think if you go to karma, which is a doctrine accepted by all schools in India, all Hindus accept karma and rebirth. Karma is basically causality: good, good, bad, bad, and none escape the law. Causality. So karma, reincarnation, that is an attempt to explain why things happen, good and bad. And it's something accepted not only in all schools of Hinduism, including all schools of Vedanta, but also in Buddhism, in Jainism, in Sikhism. All the Indian schools accept karma and reincarnation. Even deeper, if you say, no, that doesn't really cut it, I don't accept that, one can go to the Buddha's analysis that this is the very nature of the world, that this world will cause suffering. The Bhagavad Gita says, Prapya imam asukham lokam bhajasvaman. Krishna says it to Arjuna. Having come to this world, the word used is asukham. Literally, we translate it as unhappy, but in Bengali, ashuk, the word would mean disease, illness. This existence we have now is a kind of illness, is a kind of a disease. It has to be cured. And like disease, it causes unhappiness. Why would the Buddha say this? What is it about this world which is evil? Well, the nature of this world is change, is continuous change. And so, so what? Change is good. Yes, the thing is, when we try to make ourselves happy, we need many factors to be fine when we are for us to be happy. I want to be healthy. I want to be young. I want to be learned. I want to be successful. I want to be liked. I want things to be going on well around me in the community, in the world. So many things impinge on my happiness. And it's rare that all of these factors will come together in perfect equilibrium, which will make me perfectly happy. And if they do come together, if you're lucky enough to be really happy for some time, know for sure it's going to go away. It's going to go away. Why? Because the nature of the world is change. The nature of the world is change. The perfect combination of factors which made you perfectly happy is going to change the next moment into a less than perfect combination of factors. So the Buddha said, Anityam, anityam, sarvam anityam. Impermanent, impermanent, all is indeed impermanent. And then not only impermanent, kshanikam, kshanikam, momentary. It is changing moment to moment. All is momentary. Not only impermanent and momentary, empty. It is empty of any essence. Shunyam, shunyam, sarvam shunyam, empty of any essence. And therefore, being impermanent and transient, momentary, and empty, dukkham, dukkham, sarvam dukkham, all is dissatisfactory. It may not be intense suffering all the time, but all the time it's definitely dissatisfactory. It's not perfectly all right. Even deeper than this, if you're looking for an answer for the question of evil, suffering, notice that yes, the world is miserable, it is always changing, and the real reason is you've taken karma, or even deeper, the very nature of the world, that it is subject to continuous change, and so stable happiness is not possible here. But even deeper than that, if you look, those whom we consider enlightened, the Buddha himself, or the great Vedantic teachers and the masters in different paths of spiritual traditions, they were in this world. They were enlightened in this world, in this changing world, in this world subject to karma, in this world which is continuously changing, and yet they were able to overcome unhappiness. There are all kinds of sorrows and sufferings came to enlightened ones, and yet they were somehow able to rise above it, above physical pain, above the misbehavior of others, above failures. They were able to rise above it. Somehow they were very happy people, which means it's not even the nature of the world which is the source of evil. Here comes the Advaitic analysis, and this is the final thing I'll say in this question, is that we come back to a primordial ignorance. We do not know what we are. This ignorance or avidya, when this is overcome and we know the nature of things, our own nature and the nature of everything as Brahman, from an Advaitic perspective, as Brahman, all this show will go on. In the midst of this show, in the midst of this play of cause and effect karma, in the midst of this impermanent world, I will still say that all this is an appearance of my real nature Brahman, which I have now realized. And from that perspective, it's perfectly all right, even in the midst of all this suffering. So this is how you overcome evil. What evil is? It is a distinctly powerful force. It is karma. It is the nature of the world. Ultimately, it's ignorance, and it should be overcome. Two questions, similar questions. I will read them out together. One is from Vidula. She says, I have a doubt which perturbed me for years. In my youth, I lived and grew up in Calcutta, fairly religious family. My parents were doctors. My mother served at the Ramakrishna Seva Sadan in Calcutta in the 50s. I insisted I accompany her every Sunday morning. I was instructed that girls didn't meditate or take mantra diksha. Why has this been and still is part of the teaching? I was told that girls could do only puja and seva, but not even study the Vedas. I never understood the rationality behind this reasoning, and I still don't. This is entirely wrong. Girls take mantra diksha. They have for ages, and now, of course, I've There's thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of women who take mantra diksha, millions of women who meditate. All the spiritual practices are open to everybody. This has not been a part of the teaching. It's never been and nor is a part of the teaching. There were restrictions. Now, having said that, all right, there's a similar question. Let me read that out also. Somebody else was asking, are women created lesser than men? Why do we show Lakshmi Devi at the feet of Vishnu? Why did Rama not protect Sita? And so on and so forth. Okay, so the answer to this is no, men and women are equal. From an Advaitic perspective, this distinction is not there at all. We are existence, consciousness, place. We are being and awareness. We are creatures of, we are spirit. Gender comes much later. Physically, male, female, and now we have multiple genders, especially if you are in New York. We have 23, I think, legal genders in this state. All of that is body, and it can affect the mind also. So it's not just body, it can affect body, mind. And if you accept all that, that's still fine. But Advaita Vedanta says that is still not your real identity. Your real identity is sexless, is beyond gender. Being beyond gender, you may play a gender role depending upon the body-mind complex that one has. From an Advaitic perspective, we are all absolutely equal. Not only equal, we are the same infinite reality. Now, having said that, I am not denying reality or the practical reality of the societies we live in. Remember, India and indeed almost all of the world, they have been for a long time patriarchal societies. So where there were power differences, there were inequalities in gender roles, the prestige, the power, the rights given to one gender were not extended to the other gender for a very long time, and that was unfair and unjust. And I'm so glad that we are living in an age where we are remedying that pretty fast. I mean, I often meet young women who are studying here in the United States, in Canada, other Western countries, from India. They've come, and or they're working here in New York, for example. And I often think, and sometimes I ask them, think about your lives and compare it to the life of your mothers and the lives of your grandmothers, and see the enormous difference that has happened, and the differences which are still coming. So it's a silent revolution which has happened, and it has its effect on the world of spirituality, an entirely positive effect, I think. So what should have always been is now becoming more of a fact. All spiritual paths are equally open to all of us, no matter what race, what gender, where we live, what our age is, and so on. In all respects, spiritual path, in Vedanta especially, it's equally open to all. The doors to enlightenment are equally open to all, because we are ultimately one reality. Let me So somebody is asking, Atma, very well named. I have read Soham, which means I am he, means Jivatma is Saguna Brahman. I've also read Soham means Atma is Paramatma, both correct according to perspective. Both mean exactly the same thing. Jivatma means the sentient being. Saguna Brahman means Ishvara. Atma means self. Paramatma means the supreme self. Basically, what it means is, how can a jiva be equal to or one with God? Saguna Brahman, as I said, is God. So when you say Jivatma is Saguna Brahman, or it will translate into the sentient being is God. What it means is, sentient being, individual beings like us, individual sentient beings, we are pure consciousness, limited by individual minds and bodies. Bodies are different, clearly. Minds are different, clearly. But we are unlimited consciousness appearing through the lens, the limitations of individual bodies and minds. Appearing through the lens of one individual body and mind, I am one sentient being. That same unlimited consciousness appearing through all bodies and minds taken collectively is what we call Saguna Brahman. Consciousness in association with the totality, with this cosmos, is Saguna Brahman. The moment you say sentient beings, Jivatma is Saguna Brahman, is God, sentient being is God, what it means, individual sentient being is actually not an individual, is pure consciousness. God is actually not God, it's pure consciousness. As pure consciousness, the individual sentient being and God are one and the same. As individual sentient being and as God, and that level they are different. Characters are different at the level of the movie, but they are at the same time, they are nothing other than pictures on a screen. And same actor may play a beggar and an emperor in a Broadway play. But really speaking, when you say the beggar is the emperor, so there's an actor who is acting as a beggar and in another role acting as an emperor, maybe goes to the green room and changes the dress and comes out. Depending on the dress and the dialogue and the acting, the characters are different. Now, if somebody says the beggar is the emperor, on the surface of it, it's a ridiculous statement. How can a beggar be an emperor? They look different, their powers are different, their status is different, so on. But what he means is the same person. The reality behind both characters is the same actor. One actor who's not a beggar, who's not an emperor, is appearing as both. Similarly, one absolute reality is appearing as you, the individual being, as the God of this universe, and indeed this entire universe itself. That is the meaning. Jane is asking, are there Vedanta nuns? What is the training like and the daily life like for them? What vows are there? It is exactly the same as monks, as sannyasis. There are sannyasinis. So in our Vedanta societies in the United States, there are nuns in our Santa Barbara temple. It's a very beautiful Vedanta temple in Santa Barbara. You just look it up, Santa Barbara Vedanta temple. Extraordinary place. And it's run entirely by the nuns. There is another convent for Vedanta nuns in Hollywood. Look up the Vedanta Society of Southern California and Hollywood, and there is a convent which is, of course, all nuns. And there is another place for nuns in the Vedanta Society of Northern California in San Francisco. So their vows and their training, the practices they have are exactly the same as the vows and practices and training we undergo. What is their daily life like? You should ask a nun. Nataraj says, can you pursue a spiritual life and seek enlightenment as an atheist? In Advaita, it seems reasonable. Frequent invocations, omniscient beings in Vedanta sessions dilutes the message. Okay. Can you pursue a spiritual life and seek enlightenment as an atheist? Atheist, what would you mean by an atheist? If you mean that you don't believe, the technical direct meaning of an atheist is not a theist. A theist is one who believes in God as understood in theistic religions. An omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent being who is benevolent and just and is the creator of the universe and so on. Well, yes, in India, it was known that spirituality can be theistic and non-theistic. So there are non-theistic philosophies, like Sankhya, for example, is non-theistic, where you only have to realize yourself as pure consciousness. You have Jainism and Buddhism, which are entirely non-theistic. In some sense, the Mimamsa philosophy is also non-theistic. And there are many theistic philosophies in Hinduism, in Vedanta. The dualistic schools are all theistic. Now, in that sense, if you don't believe in theism, in God of religion, can you be spiritual? Yes, one can be spiritual, definitely. The Buddhists don't believe in the God of theistic religions. Sankhyans don't believe in Patanjali Yoga also believes in God, but not exactly in the kind of God. I'm making a technical distinction here, kind of God which is accepted in theistic religions. In Advaita, it includes both approaches. The self-inquiry approach of the non-theistic paths and the in the God approach of the theistic path, and what it points to is that both take you to the same reality. Frequent invocations to omniscient beings in Vedanta sessions dilutes the message. Remember, these are classical texts. They were in the classical setting of they're based on the Upanishads. So the ultimate reality, you are that ultimate reality. This is what you're interested in. If you're not particularly interested in God, that doesn't matter. But Vedanta is pretty comprehensive. Vedanta says that ultimate reality is you, no doubt, you, Nataraj. But it's also God, the God of religion, which you may not believe in. But from Vedantic perspective, that exists. That becomes a matter of faith. But suppose you say, I don't want to believe in that. I don't want to commit to that. I just want to realize my infinite nature, what I truly am, without going through the God route. Can you do that? Classical Advaita Vedanta would seem that it includes God all the time. But if you take books like Ashtavakra Gita, if you take the approach of Ramana Maharshi, in certain sections in Swami Vivekananda himself, Avadhuta Gita, hardly or almost no mention of God, and it's not necessary.
So I think I get the opportunity to ask the last question.
Right.
Such is the joy of being the master of ceremonies here, although you're truly the master of much more than the ceremony. But you know, I love your questions from everyone. Thank you so much for that. I think we need to bring you back, Swamiji, to talk just about Vedanta. Actually, many of the questions were rather specific about different levels of Vedanta and terms which really I don't even understand because they're technical words that you use. So hopefully we can get back together with you again. But I have one last question. And that is, and by the way, after my question, we're going to be led in a meditation by Swamiji. So stick around. But my question is about renunciation, because if you have a real hunger to be one with, there's no with, to be one, then it seems like our little desires keep bringing us back to a relative view, whether it's, you know, that the taste of that wonderful wine, or I shouldn't use wine perhaps as an example, or a great vegetable dish, or whatever it is, or you know, physical contact, you know, even just a pat on the back, keep drawing us back. In meditation on the pillow, you know, we can maybe touch that place a little bit. But when we're back in life, unless we're a renunciate, where your whole life is centered around concentrating on that. So what can you tell us about renunciation in life as a path toward the real purpose of our lives?
A straight answer is, do I have to renounce and be a monk to be enlightened? No, but you have to be monk-like. So a monk has to be monk-like, obviously, but even a person who's not officially, formally a monk, or dressed up as a monk or a part of a monastery, has to be monk-like. And notice that is not such a great ask. And it's not even asking you to make very dramatic changes in your life. We already are. All the people who are sincerely interested in some spiritual quest are monk-like in some way or the other. I mean, right here in Princeton, we have one of the most advanced institutes of scientific research, the Institute of Advanced Studies in Princeton, where Einstein was there, and von Neumann and Gödel and others. If you go there, I've been there several times, it's like being in a monastery. It's silence is valued above everything else. Simplicity, austerity, there it's just like being in a monastery, and that's very practical, because without that, the kind of in-depth research they do wouldn't be possible at all. If you just read about the lives of people who live there, just like living in a monastery. So giving up desire sounds like a boring thing to do, but actually it's a great relief, and one does that all the time. Whenever we become mature, from childhood to teenage, from teenage to a young person to a middle-aged person, you are giving up a lot early, but you're giving it up very naturally. So renunciation, yes, absolutely. Formally, do you have to become a monk to become enlightened? If you can, very good, but that's not an essential thing. Spirituality is for everybody. Formal renunciation and being a monk is not for everybody. I think everybody can and must be spiritual, and renunciation comes with it naturally. So if we don't, suppose if I hang on to my past baggage and still I try to be spiritual, Sri Ramakrishna gives a very nice and funny example of what happens. There was a mongoose, as you see in Indian villages, and some naughty kid had tied a brick to its bushy tail. So whenever the mongoose tried to jump over a wall, it would come and fall flat on its back again because it was weighed down by that brick tied to its tail. So similarly, we have the brick of our worldliness, our hang-ups, our negativities, and these worldly desires that we, like that mongoose, when we try to dive deep into spiritual, into transcendence, into our nature as consciousness beyond body-mind, we are again we fall flat on our back, figuratively speaking, back to body-mind identification in the world.
Well, I guess what we need to do now is renounce being able to listen to you more and go into a different place, a meditative place. Just to remind again our audience, you can see this entire Wisdom Talk again. Share it with your friends by going to sunseed.org/wisdom talks. And we'll be back again shortly with another Wisdom Talk. So be sure you subscribe to our mailing list. Swamiji, thank you again so much for everything. And I'm going to sit back and follow you in your meditation to all of us.
Thank you, Amita. Thank you for having me here once again. This meditation, it's a short meditation. I've adapted it from a meditation which you find in a medieval text on Advaita Vedanta in Rigdrishya Viveka. What it does is directly draw our attention to our innermost reality, what we truly are, and then enables us to take it back out into the world again. So the first part of it would be to relax. It's we are so much in the body and our minds are so restless that we need to step back a little bit from the world. So the first part is relaxation. If those who are watching this can sit straight, not rigid, but relaxed, relax the shoulders, relax the face muscles especially. There's so many muscles in the face which reflect tension. When you are comfortable, you can close your eyes, just keep listening to my voice. Sitting straight. Keep your arms relaxed and hands maybe on your lap if you're comfortable, or on the arms of your chair as you're comfortable. Try not to move physically during the duration of this short meditation. Breathing in and out normally. Do not change your breathing. Just notice that you're breathing in and out normally. Legs relaxed, lower part of our body, both legs relaxed. Waist relaxed. Upper body, waist upwards to the neck, relaxed. Both arms relaxed. Both hands relaxed. Shoulders relaxed. Entire back relaxed. Neck relaxed. face relaxed, whole body relaxed, breathing normally. Become aware of the sounds in your room, my voice, of course, but other sounds. Sounds in the room, outside the room, distant sounds from the city, wherever you are. Listen, breathing normally. Notice how sounds arise, you are aware, and disappear, you are aware. In my awareness, I notice the appearance of sounds, faint or loud. I notice the fading away of sounds in awareness. Before the sound arose, there was awareness. When the sound arose, there was awareness. And after the sound fades away, same awareness. And a new sound, a different sound, same awareness. Sounds come and go, different from each other. Awareness continues. Breathing normally. Sounds do not affect this awareness, do not change it in any way. This awareness reveals the sounds. Without this awareness, no sound would be heard. In fact, the sounds arise in awareness, play around in the awareness, and disappear back into the awareness. Breathing normally. Now consider, just as these sounds, various kinds of sounds and noise arise, shine in your awareness and disappear, fade away, so do sights, tastes, smells, touch. The forms that we see arise in awareness, persist in awareness, and disappear in awareness. Things seen come up in awareness and disappear again. Awareness continues. Places, persons, happenings. The awareness continue. I am not affected as awareness by what is seen or heard. But whatever is seen or heard depend entirely upon the awareness. Without the awareness, nothing would be seen or heard. They are in me, the awareness. The same goes for All tastes, smell, and touch, they arise in awareness, play around in awareness, and disappear back into awareness. Indeed, all that I call life is like a movie playing in the screen of awareness. Awareness is constant. The pictures change. Just as the pictures do not affect the screen, all the sights, sounds, smell, touch, they do not affect the awareness. Even more subtle, all thoughts arise in awareness, play around in awareness, and disappear back into awareness. All feelings, no matter how subtle, how intense, how delightful, how painful and miserable, appear in awareness, play around in awareness, and disappear back into awareness. Without awareness, none of them would be experienced, none of them would exist. But awareness is not affected by any of them. Awareness was there before the best feelings and worst feelings. Awareness was there during the best feelings and worst feelings. And awareness will be there even when the best and worst feelings have gone. Feelings, thoughts, memories, even the sense of the ego, I, they are all appearances in awareness. I am awareness. The body is in me, the awareness. The world is in me, the awareness. And truly speaking, neither body nor world are there in awareness. In awareness, there is only awareness. These are appearances, like pictures on a screen. Awareness, only awareness. Even when there are thoughts and feelings and memories and ideas, even when there is a body changing and aging, even when there is a whole world out appearing in awareness, awareness and only awareness. Breathing normally, become aware that you are seated on this chair in front of your device. When you are comfortable, gently open your eyes. Don't look up immediately. You can look down at your lap, at your hands. Then you look up. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Very grateful. Thank you, Swamiji. To everyone, we wish you all a good day, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. May you be blessed. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom aleichem. Om Hari Om. Jai Ram. Until the next time we get together, namaste.